Hey y'all, welcome to Kamira's Kitchen. Today I'm going to show you how to take some beef ribs and we are going to stew them like oxtails. When I tell you this is one of the best substitutes for oxtail that I have found, y'all, this is so good. We are also going to be making some rice and peas, some vegetables, and a corn casserole to go along with this meal. Now, I have 3 pounds of beef ribs that I have cleaned. I've taken off that membrane on the back, and then I'm just going to go and season this up with some oxtail seasoning, some pepper. I went in with a little bit of curry powder. Okay, now this isn't typically in my oxtail, but it just adds a nice, well-rounded flavor. I also put on some browning for a little color, some thyme, some pepper, and then I mixed all of this up really well. Now you want to make sure the seasonings are distributed evenly, and I just let this sit at room temperature for about 30 minutes. To stew this, I am going to use a large flat bottom brazier. Because these pieces are really wide, you definitely want to make sure you have room for all of them. Now we have to go in there and get that nice color, baby, okay? So I am just going to let these cook on a medium high for about 4 minutes without moving them. And then I am going to turn them to the other sides so that we can develop that good flavor. One of the reasons why I feel like this is one of the best substitutes is because the fat content on the ribs is really good, and it also has a lot of bone, so that produces that really rich broth. I actually think this may be a better sub even than beef and neck bones. Now I have gone in with some onion, a little bit of red wine, some garlic, and some fresh herbs. I am going to put on the lid and let this steam on medium low for about 20 minutes because you want the beef to release its own juices. I'm also going to go in with some cinnamon and allspice and a bay leaf. Now the cinnamon is going to just add a nice, well-balanced flavor to the meat. You just want a tiny bit. It won't taste, like Christmas cookies or something. Then I am going to go in with some water and some spicy and also mild peppers. I let this cook for about 30 minutes covered before just going in there and adjusting everything. Then I put in some scallions just to freshen everything up. And I allowed this to cook until it was mostly tender. That took about 45 to 50 more minutes. It just depends on what temperature you have on your stove and how tender you want your ribs. Then I went in with some fresh peppers and some fresh onions. I like to do this when I stew. Because you've cooked the other onions so long, this is just going to add a little bit of freshness. And I only cooked that for about 10 minutes. Now at this point, you should see that your beef ribs are very tender. The broth is rich. You can go in and adjust the flavoring if needed. Next up, we're going to work on the rice and peas. I have about 2/3 of a cup of dried beans. I have had them soaking overnight. And these are the beans I'm using. These are really just like small red beans. You would find them at Walmart, but I happen to get these from the Indian store. You could also just use regular dark red kidney beans. I think the best way to cook dried beans is in the pressure cooker. It is by far the quickest method. So I'm going to add in garlic, allspice, bay leaves, a little bit of this garlic escallion seasoning. You could also put in a chicken bouillon cube, and I am going to put in about 3 cups of water. You don't want to add too much because you need that water to make the beans, and you don't want any left over. I am then going to put on my lid and I'm going to pressure cook this for 40 minutes. If you forget to soak your beans overnight, you can still pressure cook them, but you can do it for about an hour and a half. It really takes that long to get them soft. Now I am going to go in and add some butter, some onion to a skillet. I'm going to saute this. Then I am going to put in some garlic and some chopped spring onion. You will need 3 cups of liquid. So I measured out whatever liquid I had left over from the beans, and I added some water if it didn't come up to 3 cups. Then I'm going to put in a packet of dried coconut milk powder. I get this from the African and Caribbean store, but I have seen it in the Hispanic section of Walmart before. You can also go in with some thyme, some allspice, and of course you want to put in the beans. When I tasted it, I felt like it just needed a little something extra, so I went in with about a half a teaspoon of the Sazon Tropical with the green top, and then I am going to add a cup and a half of basmati rice, but you could also use another long grain rice. For a little mild heat, I am going to add in 1 Scotch bonnet, but I ain't gonna bust it, okay, because I don't want, heat everywhere. And then I'm going to cover this with foil and my lid and let this cook on low for 20 minutes. These rice and peas pair so good with those stewed ribs. Let me know if you're going to try this. Next, we're going to make an easy corn casserole that has a little bit of cheese and a lot of good flavor. First, I put in a can of cream corn, and then I'm going to put in half a cup of sour cream and half of a cup of buttermilk. I'm going to add 1 egg, and I'm going to put in 6 tablespoons of unsalted butter. I also have half of a teaspoon of baking soda and salt. I'll also add about a half a teaspoon of pepper and a half a teaspoon of Creole seasoning and a half of a teaspoon of salt-free Cajun seasoning. Then I am going to mix this all together until it is well combined and set this aside. This is all of my wet ingredients. And then in a different bowl, I'm going to combine my dry ingredients. And here I'm going to put a cup of flour and a cup of cornmeal. I'm also going to add a half of a cup of sugar. Now, this is not going to make the dish very sweet. It's really just going to enhance the flavor of the corn, but it's not a sweet side dish. I'm then going to put in 2 stalks of green onion that I've chopped up, about half of a bell pepper, and 1 habanero. Even if you don't do spiciness, add the habanero. I promise you, it is really not that hot. Like, I promise you, okay? I'm then going to put in a cup and a half of corn kernels and about 1/4 of a cup of onion and 1 cup of sharp cheddar cheese. The cheese in this is not super strong. It actually just adds like a little saltiness and a bit of a umami flavor. It really just rounds out everything and gives it a great flavor. I'm then going to add all of my wet ingredients and mix it into my dry, and then I am going to grease a baking dish. This is a little bit smaller than a 9 by 13. I feel like this is more like an 8 by 11 baking dish, and I am going to pour this in. I'm going to end up baking this at 350 for about 45 to 50 minutes. You want to go until it is nice and golden brown. Then, guys, you take it out and serve. And let me tell you, one of the best things about this dish is that it is great made the night before. The next day and even the day after, it tastes fabulous. And it reheats super well and it's very moist. For my veggies, I have a really simple mixture of some cut up collard greens, some cabbage, onion, and carrot. So I'm going to add some butter. And then I'm going to add my thin sliced collard greens. Now, these are some tender greens. This is really the season for collard greens. So these are fresh from my garden. They are sweet and they're really not as tough as most of the ones you get from the store. In a replacement, I think that kale may be a better replacement if you're going to use a store-bought one. I'm just going to add a little bit of vegeta, and then I'm going to steam this down for about 5 minutes. Once it wilts down, I'm going to mix it together a bit, and then I'll let it steam for about 10 more minutes. You just want to cook it until it's the tenderness that you like. And then all of this was done. Guys, let me know if you're going to make this meal. I love you guys. Jesus loves you. And I'm going to see you next time in Camille's Kitchen. Goodbye.